Hello architecture students, this is your part 2 tutorial of your typical wall section. So last video we actually went ahead and we got done our footings, our foundation, our slab, our pea gravel, and our drain tile without any of the hatches. And we're just going to continue right from there. So on top of our foundation wall, it's our 8-foot foundation wall, we have a 2x6 plate. Like I showed before, I actually turned off all the annotations here, but here's our 2x6 treated plate. And from the PowerPoint, you saw that actually underneath there was some sill seal. It's a foam that actually creates a barrier between our foundation wall and our 2x6 plate. Because if you just put it right on concrete, there are some gaps and a lot of moisture to get through. So that sill plate keeps a lot of that moisture from coming through. So this is a 2x6 plate, and right outside on that 2x6 plate is your sheathing. So our sheathing is, let's see here, we've got our siding. This is 3/4 inch siding. Like anything, I can always just double check here, which is the right thing to do, and that is 3/4. So what I will do is I'll come right over here, and I'm going to create that 2x6 plate. So I'm going to go ahead and offset. I'm actually going to offset 3/4 so I know where to start. And then with a 2x6 plate and any kind of nominal 2x6, 2x4, it's never the size that it says. It used to be that 2x6s and 2x4s were those sizes, but not anymore. Instead, they're actually a little bit smaller because they remove the moisture from the 2x4s to make them actually stronger. So instead, a 2x6 is 1.5 by 5.5 inches. And we talked about this a little bit in architecture and engineering. And there's a reason, then we find out a reason why our walls aren't just 6 inches thick or 5 inches or 4 inches thick. We always got to take into account the width of the 2x4, the width of the 2x6, and any kind of drywall or sheathing. So now that we have that, I'm just going to grab the line command. I'm going to start right there. I'm going to move up 1.5 inches, and I'm going to go over 5.5 inches, and then I'm going to go straight down. This little line I created, I actually don't need that anymore. And here's my 2x6, and then to account, this says this is a 2x6. We always show a little X that goes through it. That is our end of our 2x4, kind of an end cap. Helps us identify what is wood and what is not. So now that we have our 2x6 treated sill plate, on top of there we will see that we have our 2x10 rim joist. And just to show you, like anything, our 2x10 rim joist is 1.5 inches thick. And then we're just going to measure straight up here. We have 9.25. So a 2x10 is 1.5 by 9.25. So I'll just go from right here. This is up 9.25, 1.5 inches, and then straight back down. And just like before, I'll go ahead and put in my X's. And now I have my rim joist. And then after that, I'll go ahead and put in my 2x10 joist. You can see my 2x10 joist just starts from the top of the 2x6 sill plate and the top of my rim joist, and it just goes right over a little bit. Like I said, there's no discernible way. You can take that to our ridge if you wanted to, but we're not going to be too worried about that right now. Alright, so now that we have our 2x4 floor joist, next thing we have to put on there is, if we're building or we're actually constructing this, we actually need to put our subfloor down. So that's 3/4 inches, and it's plywood, and the reason we want to make sure we do that is, well, we don't fall through those 2x10 floor joists. So once again, I'm just going to offset my floor joist. And I'm just going to cap that right in there at the end. That goes all the way to the outside. And then moving right over, I have now my wall. So now for this wall, if I actually check the height of my wall, going from the bottom of my bottom plate, something we talked about our last day, all the way to the top, we actually have an 8 foot, 4.5 inch, all the way to the top wall there. Some stuff is going to be taken away. Now, you know, this is where it kind of changes for you, as in, what size wall do you want? You know, some people like the regular 8 foot wall, some people like the 10 foot wall, the 9 foot wall. Do you want large ceilings? And that's something you're going to have to decide. But for here, we are just going to go ahead and stick with what we have. In reality, this is 8.4. I would 4.5 inches. I would probably go with actually just an 8 foot wall. So I'm starting to encroach here a little bit on my annotation, so I'm just going to move this right over, give myself some more room. Alright, so with that, I'm going to offset 8 feet. I actually want an 8 foot tall wall. It's going to seem a little bit shorter than the other one, but that's okay. And I'm going to go from here all the way down. And I'm going to draw my first 2x4. It's 1.5 inches up, and this is actually it's not my 2x4, but this is going to be a 2x6. It's an outside wall. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw that in. This screen capture program actually makes AutoCAD lag very much. So now I'm going to go ahead and offset 1.5 inches down for my double top plate. And we talked about this. Remember that top plate? That double top plate is used to tie in the walls. Actually makes it stronger. Alright, so now we have that. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the inside of my house here. I'm going to actually have at some point, a upper cord that goes across for my roof. And now on top of that, or I wouldn't say on top of that, but in the inside of your house, you're just here standing. You have a finished wall, which comes with drywall on the inside and the top. So normally our drywall on the top is actually 5/8 of an inch. It's a little bit thicker. When you have thicker material, it keeps it from bowing. And then on the walls, it's a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create that by just offsetting 5/8 of an inch on top. Always do the top first, because if you look, our drywall then, our 1/2 inch drywall on the sides, will actually be used to help kind of hold up the corners. Hold up the corners of our top of our drywall. So there's that. We're just going to go ahead and finish this by bringing this all the way down. And then, of course, right here on top of our subfloor, we'll put any kind of hardwood flooring, padding, and then carpet, tile, you know, what you're looking at to having in your house. So before we even touch the roof here, we got a few other things to clean up. We have the outside of our foundation wall. We have our insulation, our waterproofing. This normally is actually some pretty thick stuff, It's insulation. You want it pretty thick so nothing can get through there. Usually an inch is some of the thinnest stuff you can find. You're looking at probably 1.5 inches, but we'll just stick with 1 inch. And we'll close this up. And then we've got some rebar down here that we're going to want to create. I'm just going to kind of finish up this one, and I think part 3 we'll go ahead and be our roof. So we got our rebar about 1/2 inch thick. Going to use the old fillet command so I can just go ahead and close this corner out. And then for looks, I actually just went ahead on the other one and I arrayed this top piece, and I went with 1 column, and I want my rows to go another way, and then between them I did about I think about -1/2. So let's see here, rows, let's try 10. Maybe add an 11th there. Alright. And I'll do the same to the other side too. Alright, so it kind of just gives my rebar a little bit of a different look there when I zoom in. So I've got my rebar. Now I can go ahead and plug in some other stuff here. I'll go ahead, let's see here, and start putting in my hatch patterns. So with the last few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and put in my hatch patterns. I'll let this little utility load, and then let's take a look. So we have our concrete. So we've got concrete here, here, and here for the slab. You can see here that this is one thing I wanted to show is it's not going to allow me to fill where my concrete is down here because it's not a closed path. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this path, and that will let me put in my hatch pattern. So I'll go back to my hatch pattern, and there's my hatch pattern. Then I'm going to go ahead and put in my pea gravel. So there is a gravel icon here. You just got to be able to find it. There's gravel. And there's all the gravel, as you can see right there. Use a different hatch pattern on this one. I'm trying to figure out which one I used. For whatever reason, that one's sand. Shouldn't be sand. Use gravel. So we have gravel, we have our concrete, we have our rebar, we have our drain tile, and that will pretty much be it for part 2. In part 3, we'll go ahead and we will touch the outside with the shingles and kind of basically how we do that, and then the majority of the house will be spent working on the roof. Probably the most difficult part when it comes to rafters. So we are done there, and see you for part 3.